What's going on, everybody? It is TripleCrown24 back today, and I wanted to talk about one change that I have made in recent times that has not only made me a happier sports card dealer, but also, in some instances, a more successful sports card dealer due to this change in approach. What is that change, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you asked, even if you didn't ask. That one change is that I have stopped catering and revolving my strategy in terms of both buying and selling, and I guess also trading, as well as pricing my stuff to appeal to flippers. And as soon as I say that, I'm sure there are some out there who are thinking, oh, that sounds like a guy who just prices his stuff double comps and then he'll try to buy your stuff at 40%. That's not what I'm getting at here. I'll explain myself. There's three major questions that I'm going to ask myself when I'm looking to make any kind of deal. The first one doesn't really relate to what we're going to talk about today, and that is how quickly can I get back to my break even point? That's just something I consider as a dealer. The next two are much more relevant. The first of the two being how much can I realistically make on this? And again, the margins are going to be different. If it's a card that transacts often, that probably means that I need to buy it at a pretty low percentage below market price to have any shot of making something on it, especially if it's only a single card deal. And then the other point, which I think is the most relevant to today's discussion, is who am I going to sell this to? And that last point, I think, is something that is often lost with a lot of dealers that I run into, is that it's not as methodical and straightforward as see card, check comp, buy below comp, put out at comp, and then sell it for comp or slightly less than comp. It's not that simple. I just said the word comp more times than I ever have before on this channel in that one sentence. But it's just not that simple because it's not like the stock market where you have a trading price of a stock and you can execute a trade at any time to buy or sell that stock at X price, and you can sell it. You have to have a buyer for that card. And a lot of times when I'm acquiring cards, I'm trying to figure out who that buyer is going to be. Is there an exact science? No. But generally speaking, I kind of know which types of cards appeal to which types of people. And therefore, my buying strategy is going to depend on who I'm going to be trying to sell these cards to. There are some cards that I feel are more flipper heavy in terms of their appeal. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are more collector heavy. And usually it's somewhere in between. It's not 100% one way or the other. And I have three examples of some cards that I've picked up recently that I think kind of illustrate my point. So I'll manifest my little spectrum right here if you're watching the video. Left side here will be more collector based, and the right side will be more investor, speculator, flipper based. Let's start off with this one. And even this one might be a bit ambiguous because I think geography plays a large part of it and where I would to try to sell this card at. Ellie De La Cruz Spotlight insert from 2023 Bowman, Aqua Parallel, out of 125 PSA 9. Very popular player, also pretty popular, insert set. These spotlights have gotten a lot of appeal this year. And this is a card, to me, that is more speculator, investor, flipper driven. So I'm going to put it on this end of the spectrum. Now, the caveat with this is that I live in Cincinnati, where he plays. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people collecting Ellie De La Cruz cards because, well, he's probably one of the most exciting things that has happened to the Reds in the 21st century. I think there's more excitement now around this current team and this current roster than there was back when the Reds were winning division titles in the early part of the 2010s. So many people are excited for not only Cruz, but some of his contemporaries, your Matt McLeans, your Encarnacion Strands, Spencer Steer. The list kind of goes on with these guys. De La Cruz is the poster child. He's probably the one that gets the most national attention as well. There's a lot of people interested in LE cards across the country. But here locally, I have a better chance of running into a De La Cruz collector than I would, say, if I tried to take this to a different medium outside of a show, sell it somewhere online. then I'm probably running into more so investor, speculator, flipper types. Why is that the case? Well, what exactly has Ellie De La Cruz done to this point to make people want to collect him? There's this idea that he's going to be really good, and he's had some moments. He's had some clutch hits. He's had some mammoth home runs. He had the game where he stole second, third, and home in the span of like two pitches. Those are the kind of moments that will eventually build up his legacy to the point where people are going to say, you know what, I want to collect this guy's cards. But in my opinion, right now, a lot of it revolves around the idea of what he will become and what he is, I guess, in some sense, becoming rather than what he's actually done. It reminds me a lot of what happened with Luis Robert. And that was also kind of in a very it was a perfect storm for Luis Robert because it was during the pandemic and he didn't really have a chance to prove anybody wrong because nobody was playing. But so many people, I think, were enamored with Luis Robert cards 3 years ago, more with the idea of what he represented and what people thought he was going to be rather than who he was, what his skill set was, and what he had actually accomplished prior to reaching the major leagues. And that's kind of one of the reasons that I avoid a lot of the prospect stuff is because once you start to prove people wrong that you're not whatever they think you are or whatever the hobby labels you, support and prices tend to drop off pretty quickly. I've seen that with a lot of guys where they will have a phenomenal first year after the draft. Then they get bumped up to high A or double A. They struggle immensely and their prices just crater. And we're talking about kids who are, I say kids as if I'm not young myself, kids who are 18 or 19 years old and they're still figuring out a lot of things. Think back to when you were that age. Did you have it all figured out? And people are putting so much money into that. It's mind-boggling to me. But generally speaking, if you see a Bowman card like a prospect in my showcase, it's probably because it was part of a bulk deal or it was at a price that was so good that I just couldn't pass it up. And that's really what it comes down to is that I'm usually either buying cards that I wouldn't mind having in my own collection if they went to zero, or I'm buying cards because they were just too good of a deal to say no. And most of my deals I make fall into that camp. Let's go to the one that's in the middle. About some young liquid QBs here, right? Joey B, second year, 2021 Prism, Orange Wave, nice color match, numbered out of 60, and a fine PSA 9. This is one that I bought off of eBay, so as some people like to say, I am the last comp, right? And what appeals to me about this is that I'll tell you right now, most of you will know this. I'm not a Bengals fan, okay? I'm a Lions fan, and I live in Cincinnati, so I'm a displaced Lions fan. And the Bengals are the team that's on TV. Everybody here is a fan of the Bengals for the most part. But what this team has done in the last few years, especially the run to the Super Bowl in late 21 into early 22, I cannot help but have a little bit of Bengal fever myself. I'm guilty. I fully admit it. And it's mostly due to Joe Burrow and the guy who I'm going to show one of his cards here in just a moment. It is hard not to root for these two guys because they were teammates at LSU. I liked them there. And when they came to Cincinnati, they have just transformed what has really been a pretty miserable franchise. No offense, Bengals fans, but a pretty miserable franchise into what looks to be a perennial winner. And I really hope for their sake that they win at least one Super Bowl while they're here in Cincinnati because as much fun as it was seeing them get to one, I cannot imagine what it would be like to see them actually win one. Now, this card I kind of place in the middle because, yeah, it is a liquid quarterback here, but a lot of times, a lot of the flippers, they tell me that they only do rookie stuff, or if they are doing like anything that's considered, I guess, a veteran card, second year, maybe third year is what they stick to. And outside of that, they're moving on to whoever the next rookie is in the following class. And I can understand that because I would say, generally speaking, a lot of the most valuable cards for these guys will probably end up being a lot of the rookie stuff. From my experiences as a player collector, I can tell you right now that a lot of the most expensive Miguel Cabrera cards I own were not his rookie stuff. And granted, there was a lot less variety back then, 20 plus years ago. in terms of what a player could get. His Topps traded auto was probably the most expensive card that I had. But a lot of it was the stuff even from his days at the Tigers, which we're talking about what, fifth, 6 year cards. So not exactly early playing day stuff, but a lot of what he is, a lot of his bigger cards that I had, again, they were later on in his career veteran cards, the tougher to find stuff. And how that will pan out kind of with this new crop and this era of cards, I don't think anybody really has the answer. We can all guess all we want, but we won't really know for quite some time. But I put this one in the middle for that reason because I was very hesitant to buy Burrow's stuff at the beginning just because I felt like a lot of it was speculator driven and flipper driven. But there does now seem to be more and more genuine collectors of his that I see popping up at shows. I'm buying a lot of his stuff in this next guy I'm going to talk about because I really like these guys. And again, if these cards went to zero and I had to put them in my collection, I would not mind doing that. And that's one of the things that I like doing when I'm buying is to find things that appeal to me because I feel that I can sell them better. If it's a card that I believe in and I think is cool, it allows me to more genuinely sell it to a potential customer. Here's one that is more so collector driven. I talked about Joe Burrow, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the peanut butter to his jelly, whatever. What am I thinking of? I'm going off the rails here. He is, I mean, one of the best receivers in football, without a doubt, top five. You can make an argument that he is one of the best. I think Justin Jefferson has him beat, but uh, it's just an incredible receiver, and also he's a pretty funny guy and a very likable guy in the same essence as Burrow. He might not be Joe Cool, but he's still a pretty cool dude. This is a second year relic card out of 99. It's from a product that you're not going to be seeing a lot of people talk about when they're looking for their flip cards, uh, and that being Phoenix. Again, second year card as well, so it's not a rookie. And of course, classic Panini, the authentic memorabilia is not from any specific game or event. So as far as I know, this could just be something that was pulled off of the Walmart clearance rack and cut up and put into this card. A lot of people out there are going to be looking more so for game used and that kind of stuff. But regardless, it's still a cool card, and I still like it. The verbiage of the relic aside, I just like how it looks in the design. You kind of have the tiger stripe there with the Bengals. I like it. I think it's cool. And again, it's not from a brand that screams, oh, this is a really liquid brand that is very sought after. I'm not really too concerned about that. It was at a price point that I'm more than comfortable with. And it's something that I realistically think that a Jamar Chase collector, probably a younger collector who's looking to get jersey and patch cards, because I hear a lot of them ask for that kind of stuff. This is something that would appeal to them. And I like the design too. This looks like something that I would buy for my Miggy collection back in the day. There you see it. I've now built the spectrum, so to speak, from collector appeal to flipper appeal. And you'll see more cards like these two in my showcase simply because, again, I don't have to necessarily worry about finding someone who wants to pay me 80% of whatever the last sale may be, or more specifically, 80% of what the last sale may be if it fits their narrative and it's beneficial to them. Because if the last sale is higher than all the other ones, well, then all of a sudden you start to hear and I think this is why this one went more. It was shilled. It was sold at this auction house where people bid stuff up and they pay more aggressively, or, oh, this person didn't have to pay sales tax. There's a litany of of mental gymnastics that go on sometimes when I'm having these kind of negotiations. And what also kind of would add to my stress a little bit is I almost had to change my business strategy, or I felt I had to change my business strategy to appeal, because you'll see these two cards listed in my eBay store right now. And part of the problem that I ran into is that people would ask me, how long have you had this up in your eBay store for? And I always thought that was an interesting question. I thought maybe they were trying to negotiate a lower price. But also, when they're checking to see if it was in my eBay store, they might be checking to see, well, if I haven't sold it at this price yet and it's been out there, the chances of them getting that price is probably pretty slim unless they list it in a different way or the right buyer happens to come along. So that might scare them off of this sticker. They're going to need it significantly below that sticker. And one of the most ironic parts about that to me is that most of them are too scared to sell on eBay anyways. Oh, I don't like the fees. I don't like having to deal with the authenticity thing. Well, I don't like those things either, but I have to do it. It's part of my business is I have to sell cards on eBay. It's still the biggest marketplace out there. And although I don't agree with a lot of what they do, and trust me, I don't agree with a lot of what they do, they're still, in my opinion, the best marketplace out there. In terms of general reach, in terms of getting prices, probably still the best marketplace out there for sports cards. Take it or leave it. I would be happy to be proven wrong on that, believe me. But most people who say that kind of stuff, I find that they don't even sell on eBay themselves, which I find interesting because, oh, they're trying to say, like, well, I got to pay fees and all that stuff on there. Well, I mean, if you're not selling on eBay, then you really don't have to pay those fees, right? Maybe you have to pay PayPal fees, but they're also probably the same people who will say net to me on a transaction, like it's $50. Nah, actually, it's going to be $51.50. I need you to cover that 3% fee for me. That's again another topic for another day. But my point with all this is that I have tried to stock more cards like this because it's cards that I genuinely can sell and say that I really like these cards. I have a passion for them. I'm going to put them at a price that I think is fair. I usually price my stuff at a price that kind of with the golden rule mentality. I'm going to put it at a price that would appeal to me if I was the buyer and I was a collector looking to add this to my collection. Kind of the same thing whenever I go to make a trade with someone. When I'm making a trade, is this a trade offer that I would make to myself? And that kind of helps me judge if something is fair because I never want anyone to get screwed over in a trade. Now, if the guy I trade you tears his ACL the next day and his cards drop 50%, that I can't really help you with. I didn't know that was going to happen. But in the moment, I try to make things as fair for both sides as possible. Of course, do I want to win in a trade? Yes, but my preference would be that both sides win because I want to be able to do business again. And I don't want anyone to ever feel like they got screwed or they got shafted in a deal. That's never my intention. It happens sometimes, and sometimes I'm the one who's getting screwed because of something that happened. But you move on to the next one. You don't. Nobody bats 1,000 in this business. And I guess to kind of wrap it up here is that I've had a lot more happiness because I'm selling cards that appeal to me, and it brings out that passion in me, and I can buy and have fun buying and putting out these cards and talking about them. And I feel that genuine passion and being genuinely interested in a card is a much better sales point than, well, it will go up when the season starts, or you got a lot of meat on the bone with this card. Because to me, those are a bit more shallow. They're a bit more formulaic, and there's not that much personal connection. And when you tie everything together that I put together here, I find that I've actually had more success because of that passion, because I haven't been worrying about it. Is that I buy quality cards that I'm interested in, and people pay up for those prices. I'll tell you a quick little story is that I had a Sauce Gardner auto, the one that I picked up from the National, and I put it in the Discord server. And I got someone who said, none of these have sold above this price. There's no comps above this price. Do you have any room on it? And I said, I'm always open to offers. This guy didn't end up making an offer. Maybe he found someone else he wanted to buy, or maybe he just thought that he couldn't offer me a price that he was comfortable offering. That's fine. But I ended up selling it on eBay later that day for $25 above what any of them had previously sold for. And it goes back to showing that, yeah, there are people who do pay above the last comp. There's a reason that some of these cards go up and down in price is that somebody has to be willing to pay above that last number. Otherwise, every single card would go to zero. And I don't know what it is, if it's just trying to get the best deal possible, if it's feeling entitled to whatever that last sale may be. But whatever it is, that's why I price my stuff like that, is because people do pay above the last comp. I think my audience knows that, but there's probably a lot of people out there who haven't quite caught on to that yet. So to wrap it up, I'm focusing more so on appealing to collectors, and when I'm buying something, I kind of figure out what collector is going to take home the card that I'm putting out there. And if it happens to be someone who's just buying it to flip it, then hey, go for it. I hope if you are successful with it, that means you'll come back. Once it's yours, you do with it what you please. As long as you're not trying to scam someone, I don't have a problem with it. On the opposite end of that coin, though, I'm not going to bend over backwards for someone else to make money. It is not their responsibility for me to make money on their cards, and vice versa. It is not my responsibility for them to make money on the things that I am bringing with me. That'll wrap it up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this perspective again. This is something that has made me a lot happier dealing with cards, is that not catering towards the flip crowd specifically has made me a lot happier and also a lot more successful with more sales and getting more out of my cards and putting out. I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this topic down below, even if you're not a dealer. Kind of just, what do you think about what I have to say? Could be any thought in general. But until next time, take care, stay safe, be kind.